Hi, this is Tim from the Arcade Repair Tips video series. In the following video, we're going to show you how to put together this cocktail cabinet kit from HollandComputers.com. But we'd like to talk to you about a few things before we get into the assembly of the kit. There's a couple things that we think are really unique about this kit. The first and foremost is that it is the only plug-and-play kit on the market. Well, what does that mean? That means it's practically made for you beginners who don't have much arcade knowledge. Maybe you've never owned a game, or for sure you've never built a game before. There is no soldering or advanced wire knowledge needed. Just a few tools and you can build this cabinet. We would like to say that we think it is well made and sturdy, and you should get lots of enjoyment for your family and your friends for a long time. You still on the fence about ordering it? Go ahead and buy it, because we are sure that you're going to be happy with the quality and that you will really like this cabinet kit. Now, let's go on and show how to put it together. Hi, this is Tim from the Arcade Repair Tips video series. Now, most of the time we're talking to you about how to fix and repair arcade games, but today we got something very special. We're actually going to teach you how to assemble a game from scratch. Don't have a game? Can't find a game near you? Search Craigslist and eBay and just nothing in your area? This is your solution. Now, we have purchased this kit from Holland Computers. Many of you guys know them at HollandComputers.com. That's HOLLAND Computers.com, or Retro Arcade US. This is their catalog. They sell all kinds of games and parts that we use a lot in repairing games, but they also sell this kit. It comes in 3 boxes, and we're going to use this kit to build a 60-in-1 multi-cade game today from scratch with just a few simple tools. Now let's go over them very quickly. The first thing that we're going to need is a hammer. And most of you will have one of those laying around, or your local hardware store, of course, and a Phillips screwdriver. Your number 2 size, just normal, everyday household Phillips screwdriver. And for some finishing touches later, you may want to have a razor blade handy. Probably one of the most important things that we're going to use today is a digital multimeter. Now, most of your local hardware stores will carry one, but if you don't have one, just so happens that Holland Computers sells one, and you can get one shipped with your retro kit. So, let's get started right away. I'm anxious to build and get this game going. Now, something we should tell you right off the bat is that this kit does not include a game board or software of any kind. These items are sold separately. With that said, this kit should work with just about any JAMMA compatible game. So you could go to eBay or Amazon and purchase a JAMMA board of any kind, or a multi-game board. Those should work in here. You could also run a main computer inside of it using a USB to JAMMA converter, which you can purchase from HollandComputers.com. Today, we'll be using this generic JAMMA board for demonstration purposes only. Again, no board or software comes with this kit. So our first step is going to be to assemble the cocktail cabinet itself. And we had 3 boxes to choose from, and you want to know, how did I know that this is the cocktail cabinet? Believe me, you'll know. It's quite heavier than the other 2. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and open it up and get all the parts laid out so that we can begin our build. Okay, so we just opened the box, but before we go any further, let's take a look at some of the parts that were included in the cabinet box. Okay guys, so this is what it looks like unassembled. As you can see, there are all these parts. There's the sides of the cabinet, the bottom, the top, the plexiglass, the bezel, and all the control panel parts over here. One thing we do want to mention is just like any other piece of furniture that you buy in a box, it did come with a lot of styrofoam. That did make quite a mess. We wiped as much of it as we can. We had to sweep. So you may want to make sure that you've got plenty of room to do this so everything can be spread out. Also, we like that we have a hardwood floor here. If you were doing this on carpet, you would be doing a lot of vacuuming and stuff, so you may want to at least unbox it somewhere else before you bring it in your living room or in your shop to start assembling together. Now, there is a hardware kit and some T-molding. We're going to talk about them here in just a minute. Okay, so there are an additional couple items that are included in your cabinet box. One is a bag. This includes all your hardware, cams and screws and stuff that we're going to use to put and hold the cabinet together. So keep this in a safe place and hold on to it. The other is this bunch of blue stuff. And what is this? Well, a lot of you guys know this is called T-molding. I'm going to point to this game right here behind me, NBA Hoops. You can see this is T-molding that goes around the edging of the game. That's where this is going to go around and make your cabinet look great. Now, you may be wondering, I ordered a different color. Let's say you ordered green. Well, all the kits come with blue. So you're going to get blue. So don't be blue about that. Just hang on to that. You're going to get blue with your kit. But if you ordered, say, green, it may come in an additional box. You'll get that, so you don't have to put the blue on, but it will come with blue, and so keep that in mind. All right, now, one thing that the kit didn't have is a manual or instructions. So what do we do here? Well, you're going to do the same thing that we did. You'll just go to hollandcomputers.com, click on the hardware link, then go to Arcade Parts Manuals. And that's where you're going to find the instructions. Same instructions we're going to use. We have them up on our computer over there. Same instructions we're going to use to put this cabinet together today. Okay guys, we are starting from step one, and we have both the A side down here and this is the B side that you can see that we are going to install the cam hardware in. Now what you need to look for is there is a 3-hole side and there's a 4-hole side. You want to make sure that you get C1, which are the black cams, and you put them on the 3-hole side. So we're just going to put them in there. This is where you'll need your hammer. Put them with the flat side, this flat piece right here facing out, and we're just going to hammer those in. Okay, make sure those are even. So the 3 sides, the one with the 3 holes, are going to be black. Put that in. Some of these you can kind of push in by hand. Some of them, most of them, you're going to have to tap with a hammer. Then the white ones, or C2 in the manual, are going to go in all the other holes that you see in this board. Real simple. Just going to put it in. Again, the flat side out like that. As you can see, we separated some of our hardware in 2 different bowls. That may help you to do that too. A good flat surface definitely necessary in this project. And I'm just tapping those edges just to make sure that they're straight. It's keeping that even with that outside edge. Again, real simple. Now, there are some screws in here, and step 1 also tells us we got to find the 2 that are closest up here to the speaker. There's 2 holes real close up here in the corner. You stick the screw in part or the spiral part down, because that's what we're going to screw into the wood. We're going to use our Phillips head screwdriver here and just screw those in. Make sure that they're going in straight, because those are going to lock into some cams later. we want to make sure that they're not crooked. So if it starts off crooked, restart it. Here is the B side is done. Now I'll give you a close-up here. This is the A side I did earlier. So step 1 is now complete. Okay, now on to step 2 of our project. We have already installed the 2 C2 or the white cams in here and the pegs. Since you know how to do that from the first step, you can go ahead and put that in. Now we're going to go ahead and install the T-molding. I've done all the way around here. I'm going to show you a trick though that's in your instructions to do in the corner. This is where the razor blade is going to come into play. All we're going to do is about an inch before the corner, we're going to just make some cuts. About every ½ inch or so, we're going to make about 7 or 8 cuts. And that's going to help me to go around this corner more easily. Now originally we said that you would just need a hammer. We're actually going to recommend that you get a rubber hammer for this, for T-molding. A regular hammer will work, but a rubber hammer really seems to work better in this application. So the T-molding goes into this slot that goes all the way around the edge. Now you'll notice one side of the board doesn't have that slot, so there's not going to be any T-molding here. You can see I started in this corner. And the T-molding wasn't exactly straight, so we cut it with some scissors and made it real straight right there. And all I started to do is hammering it in there. Again, when I got to the corner, I cut in those slots. I think you guys can see that. I know if you're looking at your instructions, you'll see that part. And all we're going to do is go around this corner. Now sometimes it helps to have an extra hand or a friend to watch. You want to make sure that the T-molding is falling right into the groove. We're going to go right around this corner and we're just going to tap it as we go. And that will help us make this corner. Corners are the most critical part, and there it's trying to get out right there, but I'm not going to let it. I'm just going to go gently tap this all the way down. All the way down. Once you get it to that straight part, it usually goes pretty easily. We're just going to use the rubber hammer and get it all the way down to this corner. Now, we may go back over this in just a minute, but I just want to go ahead and get the length right. Again, here with the razor blade or a really good pair of scissors, and you can cut this straight. And we can trim that again with the razor blade. Getting rid of the excess right now will help us. And so ends step 2. Okay, moving on to step 3. As you can see, we take the one we just finished the T-mold in side C with these 2 cams up. We set it down here. Then we took the side B and we put it up inside of these pegs right here. And all I had to do was go into these cams. There's a screw right in the top, and I'm going to turn that as tight as I can get it. We're turning here and turning down here, and that locks it into place. Now you might notice on the edge there is an outside edge like this. It doesn't go flush with this. That's okay. That's what we want right there. And now all we got to do is go ahead and put the A side on over here, and we'll be done with step 3. Now on to step 4, where we install the floor. This is part D, and we've already installed these black cams. This time it's not going to be the white ones, it's going to be the black ones. We've already put those in. One thing that we really like about this floor is these slats. That's going to really help with airflow and keep your game cooler. So once you have the cams put in, the black ones, then we turned the cabinet on its side with the holes for the control panels facing that way. And we're just going to slide this in and push those up tight against there. And then we're going to lock them in by turning the cams to the right. You're going to have a couple inches space down here. This will lock those in. And there is the game floor installed. Okay, now we're on to step 5, which is the fan panel, or panel E. We've already put the pegs in there, and we also had to install some more T-molding that's going to go around this. There are a couple things we didn't mention earlier. We're going to talk about a couple more tips on T-molding. One would be that sometimes there's some extra wood in the slot the T-molding goes in that will kind of jam it. If you take a small flathead screwdriver or something, you may need to actually clean out the groove just a little bit. The next thing is, you know, we talked earlier about going around that corner and making the little cuts. Sometimes it's actually necessary to make a bigger cut in there, and if we'll zoom in right now, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So we're making these cuts, and what I'm actually going to do, you'll see this in your instructions about T-molding, is to make kind of a V-shaped cut right in that corner where the T-molding is going to go, and it'll actually come right out right there. So you got a right here in the corner. That will help it go around that corner and lay a little better. So we're just going to keep going around that corner. There's where the V-shaped cut is, and that will help this to stay in there. Look at that, it adheres to that corner really good. So I'm just going to keep going here as I get, now this edge right here, we can just take our scissors or something and cut it. Again, you can trim this up with your razor blade if you want to. Just making sure that that T-molding is in that groove all the way around. Laying flat like that. Again, we can take our razor blade and trim off the excess right there. Watch your fingers. Okay, now once the T-molding is installed, you can see how close it is to the corner right there. Everything looks good. Later on, you may want to go back over everything real quickly with a little rubber hammer like that. But for this purpose, we'll just show you. This is the bottom down here that has T-molding. The top does not. Here's our bottom of our cabinet. The electrical plug will go to the right side if you have yours facing like mine. And all we're going to do is set those pegs down in there, then we'll get underneath and tighten them up. Okay, for step 6, we're going to use panel 01. We've already put the cams, pegs, and T-molding on the sides. That's the only place you'll need the T-molding is here. Now the cams will go towards the upper side of the cabinet, and if you do this correctly, these 3 holes will line up with our our plug, where our power is coming into our cabinet. They'll line up all on that right side. So we're just going to put the pegs into the cams and tighten them up. Well guys, we were rolling along really good, but we still had this big bowl of cams and pegs left. Well, welcome to step 7. We're going to get rid of all of those as we build the control panel. Now you'll need several steps in this. You have H, I, J, F, and G. And of course this is what we're going to do. We've already put the pegs in. You might notice on F and G you don't have 2 sides F, 2 sides G. 1 F and 1 G goes in each side, okay? You might notice that we use the white cams up in the top here. This is the last time we're going to see those guys. So they go in F and G at the top. They did have 1 extra in case you break or lose one. So that was nice of them to send that in that kit. But now we're through with that. We put cams and pegs in F and G. We also put cams in the bottom of I here. and there's some cams in H also. So all of these have pegs, cams inside of them. Now we're going to assemble it all together. And now we're on step 8, and the first part of it is basically installing, putting all the control panel together. We have taken H, F, G, and J, and we have put those in and locked those together. Remember, we already had the T-mold in, so when it's done, it should look like the front of a control panel, just like that. Your joystick right here on the left, all this blue in the front. This is what you're going to see when you're playing the game. Now it tells us to stop right here. Before you install panel I, which is the back, it wants us to go ahead and put the joystick and buttons in and wire them up. That's what we're going to do now. Okay guys, now it's time to install the joystick. Well, let's take a look at the joystick itself. One of the first things that you'll notice is there's a protective film or a little cover on the joystick. You can peel that off and throw it away if you want. I'm going to leave ours on here. For one, you don't see it in the game, but it does kind of protect the metal. Let's say if you spill a drink or some water gets down in here. So for our video today, we're actually going to leave this part on here. The next thing I want to talk about is this restrictor plate on the back. Now currently, when you get your joystick out of the box, it's going to be able to go in 8 different ways. So for instance, if I hit diagonally here, this switch and this switch are both activated. The problem with that is, let's say we're playing a classic arcade game and I want to go left, but it hits that diagonal position, it's not going to know which way to go. So what we want to do is change this from an 8-way joystick to a 4-way joystick, and it's very simple to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen every one of these screws. We're not going to take them all the way out, but we are going to turn them and loosen them up. We're just loosening every single screw. There's 4 of them. Alright, after those are loosened, the easiest way to do this is to turn it upside down. We're actually going to turn it upside down. It will kind of fall forward. Then we're going to turn it clockwise to the right, just that quarter turn. Then we flip it back over, and we are going to tighten these back down now in the 4-way position. And you'll notice that it kind of now has this diamond shape right here. So you'll know that it's in the 4-way position when you see that diamond shape. I'm just going to tighten all 4 of these down. After they're tight, I'll show you. Now, I cannot go in that diagonal position. It wants to hit either left or right or up or down. It'll only go in 4 ways. And that will really help us when we're playing our 60-in-1 games. Now, let's talk about installing the joystick. First thing that we'll notice is that we need this part to be on the outside, but it won't fit through this hole. Now there's a real simple solution for this, and this is something really unique about this joystick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a paper towel or something and cover up this base. Now I'm going to take a pair of needle nose and squeeze it right here. With that squeeze, that way I don't scratch it, all you have to do is unscrew the red ball. So by hand, with this held, I can easily unscrew that red ball. Now with the red ball off, we're going to take it and put it on the side here. We're also going to take off this cover. Now what we're going to do is put it through the hole. Now to line this up, we need this part to be in the center. So we can use that, get that right in the center where we like it or we want it. You don't want it to be too far down or too far on the side. You really want to make sure that you're right in the center of that. Now that that's in the center, I've already marked my holes here. We can come around and screw down our joystick. So again, this is really simple. We pre-drilled our holes. You may want to do the same, just so that it screws in a little easier. We're going to screw all 4 screws in. With our joystick good in the center. The back ones are a little tough to get to, but you can reach them. So with the joystick screwed in good, and it's in the center, we're going to put our cover back on. Now you can use the same paper towel, kind of a lot lower now, so we'll just leave the screw part exposed. We're going to hold that with our needle nose pliers, and now by hand we're going to screw that joystick on. Doesn't have to be super tight, just tight enough to where it gets on there. And that's what our joystick looks like once it's installed. Now it's on to the buttons. Now, button preference is this is your preference. You don't have to use the same color scheme that we do, but you certainly probably want to put your player button here. We'll pull that one out of the box. This will of course be your white button. And you're also going to make sure that he is facing upside, not sideways or upside down. So we will get, he's facing you. In other words, yeah, we actually are upside down because this is the way the control panel goes. I'm going to actually put it like it goes. That makes more sense. Okay, he is facing up, like we're going to start player 1 right there. I'm just going to kind of hold my finger there. As I come around, this big nut has a bigger part on one side, and it will just screw down on here. If he tries to turn the button too much, you might want to restart it again. It should go on there pretty easily. And this guy is wanting to be a pain, so we're just gonna, there. Once you get it on there right, see, it should screw down at least pretty easily. Now we're gonna tighten that as tight as we can. Now I'm sure Holland Computers sells a button wrench that you can purchase from them if you're worried about that being loose. Now here comes a part you guys may or may not be familiar with. The object is a button. These two things, as I push this button, they come down and they hit the little cherry switch on top. So we'll know we have this the right direction when that cherry switch is actually hit. So you wouldn't want to put it this direction. You want the cherry switch facing up, so when it hits that. Easiest way to do this is start with one of those holes, the hole that's closest up there. Push him in, and that other one goes, the hole goes in that leg. Now if you can zoom in on that, if you guys can see that, the cherry switch is actually being pushed down every time I push the button, and this would be correct. Now on the player 1 button, we don't have a lot of choice because we need this button to be straight. On the other buttons, we can position them whatever way makes it easier to wire up. So we like the number 1 button to be red because that's usually your fire button. We're going to put this button in there.
It does, like I said, he doesn't have a player on him, so he can turn all different directions. And we're going to mount him where the wires will be easier to get to. I'll show you that here in just a second. Once we start that, I won't tighten that until we put the switch in. Again, he's got two legs that come down, so we want to make sure the switch is being hit by the leg. So right there, the switch would not be hitting the leg. See, there's no hole there. So I'm going to actually turn the button around, and now, as you can see, if I put him in that top hole up there, he is going to be then in this bottom hole over here. Sometimes it helps to have a screwdriver or something. You can kind of spread this out. It's probably easier, I'm going to redo this. It's easier to put this bottom one in first. Once he gets in, I'm pushing that apart with my thumb. Now, here comes the part. I haven't tightened this yet, because if I put it this way, it would be really hard to put the connectors on. It would be right up against the wall. So I either want to put it to the side like this, or up front. We kind of prefer up front. If all three are up front, they will all be easy to get to. But you certainly wouldn't want it this way either, because there's going to be another button right here. So up front towards the outside here of the control panel would be great. So there goes the red. Now we're going to do the same thing for the blue and yellow. Like I said, you can change up, they don't have to be red, blue, and yellow. It could be yellow, blue, and red. That's up to you.
Okay, it also tells us to go ahead and wire in the controls. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, it's pretty simple. What we're going to look at is the JAMMA harness, this big thing of wiring. And this harness it has this edge connector right here. Now, something neat that you can get from Holland Computers that not everybody has is this is actually printed where every wire goes, and it's in English. Some of you right now are shaking your head going, wow, because that's a neat deal, because you don't have to put a sticker over this or anything. It's all in English. So we will follow this wires, and what we did, we traced, it says player 1, you have one start, one left, one right, all those things, one button 1. We traced all that and found that that's this bundle of wires. Now also in our directions, it's color coded, so it tells us which wire goes to what. Then you have this thing, it's called a daisy chain of black wires, and about every 4 inches there's a connector. There's a reason for that. This is your grounds, and we're going to hook that up first, and it's going to go to each button. Now we'll zoom in and show you what we're talking about.
So what I did here was I went ahead and wired up all the grounds that were daisy chained, but I'll explain that. There are 3 places that you could hook wires up to. The black wire, your common, is going to go to the one on the top that's a little different than the other 2, okay? So I took, coming right off my harness, the first one goes right here, I put on the start button. Then it changed around, I went to that same slot, or the common, on every switch that was here. Okay? Now, you're not going to use this bottom one. That's your normally closed one. You're going to use the second switch, these 2. And actually, the joystick only has those 2. And that's nice. But on your buttons, they have 3, but you're only going to use these 2. You don't use that bottom one. If you having a problem, a lot of times you'll see this one bent or broken off or cut off. It really shouldn't hurt anything. Just leave it on there. We're going to be hooking up to this. So one nice thing about if you go to hollandcomputers.com, hardware link, arcade parts manuals, you'll be able to print out or look at this sheet. I had this sheet sitting right here beside me, which we printed it in color, which makes it really nice because it tells me what all colors go to where. And also it has a drawing over here of where everything is wired up to. That's what we're going to be demonstrating and showing you now. But the first thing was to get all the ground wires. So I'm going to pop this button back in here like he goes. Actually, he goes, yeah, like this. Okay. Now, the first one I want to wire up is the player 1 start. So, if we go down here, we will see player 1 start is a brown wire. It also goes to number 17 of our harness. I'll show you guys that here in just a second. Here's the harness on the ground. And if you will count to number 17 on what's called the parts of the solder side, so we count up, go up 17 slots, we'll see that it's a brown wire, like it said, and in my bundle, all going to my player 1 start, I see a brown wire. We're going to hook that up. It's going to go into that second position that we talked about. Remember, we said we wouldn't use the third, but we're going to use the second one. Now, these should be tight, and they should fit on there really good and snug. You should be able to do it by hand, but just in case, or if you need help, you can use a pair of needle nose like so, and just push it on there. Make sure that's on there good and snug. Shouldn't easily pull off, because if that's not on there, it won't work right. Okay, now our button 1, if we're looking at the game, this would be our button 1, 2, and 3. So red, blue, and yellow. It's the way we chose. You can choose a different combination. Our button 1 is red. So if we go to player 1, button 1, and let's find that guy. Player 1 fire is what they call it. We're looking for a blue, and it looks like kind of a dark blue. This is so much easier. We don't have to trace these all the way back to what pinout they are. They made it color coded for us. So easy. We're just going to put that blue wire right, slide him onto there. Make sure he's on there good and snug. Okay, so our fire button 2 for player 1 is purple. So we find this purple or violet. We're going to wire him again. It's the second leg. Make sure he pushes on there. You have a button later that's not working right, check 2 things. Check your ground and check this switch. These could pull off. They're made to disconnect. This one's a little tight to get in there, so I'm going to use the needle nose pliers I mentioned earlier. That will help me actually get in that tight place that my fingers aren't able to get in very well. Okay, finally got the purple one on there. Now I looked up player fire 3 is a gray button, and we're going to put him on. Okay, he's in there. Now it's time to wire up. We don't have a button 4, 5, or 6, so the white, pink, and black are not going to be used. You can either cut them or just bundle them up and tie them off somewhere in case somewhere down the line. We'll probably just cut them in a little while. Here comes a little bit tricky part if you've never done this before. What you need to do is act like you're playing the game. If I go up, it actually does not hit the switch that's up. It hits the opposite switch. So look, I'm going up here. It's actually hitting this switch that's down. So this would be player 1 up. Okay? So now if we look at that, player 1 up is red. So again, I find this red wire, and I'm going to hook him to that second one that is player 1 up. Alright, once he is on there, and I may move him around here where I might use my needle nose just to get that guy. Okay, now the next one we're going to do, let's just look at the right button. Remember, when you're going right, and this would be right, there's their guy, we're going right, we're actually hitting this switch right here. So you would think this would be up, but it's not. This is the right switch. So player 1 right, and we're going to find him on here. So player 1 right is green. So we're going to hook up the green wire here, and then if we want to go down, again, this would be down. Hitting the down switch like this actually triggers that one. So if we look over here, down is orange. We're going to hook up the orange wire here. Then we only have one left, and that would be player 1 left. And when we hook him up, we look up the chart here, he's yellow. So we're going to hook up them 3 wires, and then we're going to go ahead and work on the player 2 side. Now you may notice that we've had a little trouble getting some of these connectors on, but that's a good thing. They're very snug, but that means they'll make a good connection. This one is especially tricky because he was so close to the wall. We actually took a needle nose pliers and bent him this way just a little so that we could get that on there good. But that's okay. It's okay that he bends out just a little. All we did was just take the needle nose and bend the whole thing out like that, so that we could slide that connector on there. So you want to make sure they're on there, and they're on there tight, and they are. So that looks like player 1 is completely wired up.
Okay, now that step 8 is complete, we're moving on to step 9, which basically is just installing the back panel. We've already done all the wiring and so forth. There is a trick to this you guys need to see. I pulled back the T-molding just for a few minutes while we put this in. What you want to do is put it in and get the bottom 2 while you're up like this. Actually, it's the top ones. We're going to go ahead and tighten them so you can reach them with the screwdriver. So we'll tighten them, then we'll just flip this around. It's a little tight, and that's okay. I may use my rubber hammer here. Just give this a little love tap. There. Let that go in. Now we can tighten these top ones because I can reach them easily right there and right there. Without that, you would have to use some short screwdriver, and it would be really hard. So you pull that in and flip it around. Then all we have to do is reinstall the T-molding. Now we're going to run this daisy chain all the way over till it reaches, you'll skip some of these because you'll need it to go across the cabinet till it reaches. We may actually start on the other side on player 2. I'll show you that in just a minute. We'll chain it around, then we'll hook up the player 2 side just like we did the player 1.
Okay, before we go any further, we want to go ahead and run the wires through the cabinet. Player 1 side is done, but what I did was I ran the wires all the way through this side so that when I hook it up and then we connect the control panel, the wiring inside will already be done. And that's just pretty simple, that we need to put the player 1 side through the holes, through this hole, so that we don't have to come around here later and redo anything.
Okay, on to step 10, where we're going to be attaching the control panels. We've already put the pegs in the outside. Another thing that's really important to note, you can remember we ran the wires through here. So we have the wires going through the hole so that when we attach these, we don't have to get back up in there again. So all we're going to do is watch your wires coming through here. And you may have to loosen some of the internal cams. We've already done one side. We actually had to loosen one of them and kind of get it in and then tighten it up again. Hopefully this side will go on a little easier. but you may have to play with the cams, loosen and tighten a few of them to get it to fit really snug. Okay, step 11, we're going to be installing these thin K panels. There's not much to them. They already have a couple of screws pre-drilled. So what we did, in your hardware kit, there were 4 long black screws, wood screws. I went ahead and started them all the way through there to where they're poking out the other side. I'm going to put that panel inside of here and line up those holes and just screw them in. I'm just screwing them into the sides here. Said again, if this is a good time, if you have a power screwdriver you want to use, it would save your arm a little strength, but you can get these in here with a handheld screwdriver. Just takes a little bit longer. And those screwed in, just a little bit longer. We want to get those good and tight. We'll do that to both sides, and that will be the end of step 11. All right, we're on step 12, which means we're putting on the top. We put the pegs in already, and we went around with the T-molding. Now we started right in the middle of player 2, just to let you guys know, and that's where we finished up. And if you're at that point now, you can say, thank God the T-molding is finished. We also had about 8 or 9 feet left over, just to let you guys know, if you mess up earlier, don't panic, because we have plenty of T-molding for this project with quite a bit left over in case you want to do your kitchen table or anything. But now on to step 13. Real quick, before we move on to step 13, you want to make sure that the pegs are on the bottom side of the top. The cutout side right here, where the bezel goes, is going to be the top. So this is the top. The pegs go on the bottom side. We're just going to mount those up and lock those in.
Okay, on to step 13, 14, and 15, which is basically building a shelf that goes down in our cabinet. We started off by putting in these screws. We had 3 choices, and I think that's because they allow you to put it where you like it. We preferred the top one. You may have a different preference, but we put the screws in the top one. Now we put the cams, the rest of our cams that we're going to use, the black ones, into M here, and we're going to install M, which it's going to go down in here, and you're going to face the cams towards you on this way. That way you have enough room to get into here and tighten this. If they were that way, I couldn't get my screwdriver in there, but because I have a hole on this side, we chose to put it in that way. Tighten those. Okay, that's good. Good and tight. So I've installed the first M panel, which is closest to the wall back here, but my cams are pointing towards me. That's important because that's going to give me enough room. Then I've already put the pegs in my end panel. This is in. We're going to put it in this side. Again, you're going to have to be real careful with all these wires already in here, because we don't want to have to fix any of that wiring. I'm going to get this in just that back piece. Already tightened in the sides. Now I just need it to drop in. And now I can tighten the back one kind of while I have this off. Okay, so there's half of it. Now here's my other panel. Again, I'm going to do it with the cams to this side. making sure all my wires aren't anywhere getting pinched or anything. I'm going to do the sides first. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and tighten them to keep that into place. Now I can set my shelf on down. Isn't that lining up? I may need a rubber hammer to just kind of give it a tap and let that fall down in there. Then I'm going to tighten those up.
Okay, it's really starting to look like an arcade game, but we need a monitor. And step 16 tells us to install the LCD. Now, what we did was we temporarily just set it down where we think it should go. So what we need now is to make sure that we get the bezel that came with it. And all we're going to do is just lay the bezel kind of where we think it should go. And by looking directly over the screen, I might need to move it left or right. What I'm trying to do is, looking straight down at the screen, I'm trying to see which place would hide all the gray sides. So it's black and black here, and this looks like it's lined up just perfectly. All I did was just kind of scoot that around with my fingers a little bit. Now that that's done, I can temporarily remove the bezel. And you might remember the monitor come with 4 screws, and so all we have to do is screw down the sides, and once those are in, our monitor will be installed. Okay, step 17 tells us to put a door on, but we're not done with the wiring yet. So let's take just a few minutes and talk about wiring. Now, when we talk about wiring, we always start at power. So from the wall to the game and then so forth. What we're looking at here is a power module. In your kit, should have one of these things. We might just call it the on-off switch. And also, they sent a cable or a wire that looks like this, has a couple of connectors in the middle, and that is what we're going to wire up. Let's look at wiring up the power module now. Okay, we're going to give you an overview of how to wire up the power module. Remember this part that came with the on-off switch. So we're going to do this outside the cabinet. I highly recommend that you do that also, and you'll see why in just a minute, because we're going to run the wires up through there. But first, let's talk about the cord that goes to this. Now, you may be tempted. You got 2 kinds of cords. One is long and has a break kind of in the middle. Then it has this on the end. The other one is just a straight cord that goes from the wall here, where it plugs in, to this module. So make sure that you do not take the cord that has the extra terminals on it and plug it in here. That's not where this goes. This will end up going to our monitor. The one that goes in here is the one that goes straight to the wall, doesn't have anything. Now, if you'll zoom in here, I will show you the difference. There's a couple of things that we're going to talk about. There's 3 terminals here, and they both have 2 brown wires, 2 blue wires, and 2 yellow wires with green stripes. And they have these fork terminals on them, or kind of a U-shaped. Those are going to go to our power supply over here in just a few minutes. But the other end, this is what's important, it has a single brown wire, a single blue wire, and a single yellow wire with a green stripe, and it has these female connectors. Now that is what is going to go on the back side of our module. Now the one easy one is the one at the top. It's just the yellow wire with the green stripe, or our ground. Now remember, this is solderless, so this should just easily push on. So it should just slide right on, And if you had to, it should pull right off, but it should be good and snug and fit on there tightly like it does. Now facing you, we're going to wire up the AC1 and the AC2, or the line and the neutral. We're going to put the brown one on the left side here and the blue one on the right side. Again, those just easily slide on there. Make sure that they're on there good. Now the other end of this wire, and if you'll follow me down here, this is where we are going to put it inside the cabinet, and why we did it on the outside. The wire that has this plug on the end is going to go through the hole first. And then we're just going to pull all of this wiring all the way through there. And then with our plug at the top, we're going to slide that on there. And there were 2 screws that were included. We're going to screw them in now, and then the module will be wired up.
Okay, now that we have screwed in our power supply here, we wanted to, the power module, we're running this power wire over to our power supply. And if you'll notice here, you have 3 choices for AC. You got AC line, AC neutral, and your ground. The ground was easy. It was just the same yellow and green white striped wire. In our case, if you got this kit, the brown wire here will go to the line, and the blue wire will go to the neutral. So if that is hooked up correctly and we turn this on, we should get power to this power supply. And let's watch, it should come on. Okay, we can also check that with the meter. Now, if you got the same meter from Holland Computers, we want to check the AC voltage, and that's over here. We're going to turn it to this 200. You always want to go higher than the voltage that you want to check, whatever the next level is. We don't need 600, 200 is close enough because it's 120 volts coming in from the wall. So now if we check this, we should get around 120. We're at 124, somewhere from I would say 15 to 125 is in the fine. That's in the range that we're okay. Now we need to check the DC voltage. So we're going to have to change the setting on our meter. This is the DC side. We're looking for 5 and 12 volts. So we're going to put it on 20, which again would be the one right above what we're going to check. So we're going to set that on 20. And now we are going to put the black wire on one of these grounds, doesn't matter which one, and the 5 volts, it says +5 is right here, and we're at 5.2. So we are a little bit high. We're going to adjust that down. Now we're not going to use the -5 on here. If you want to, you could make a mark on that one that one is not going to be used, or you could just take that screw out to make sure you don't hook up something wrong. But for right now, we're going to be checking our 5 volts. It's more important that we get the 5 volts in than it is the 12 at this point. But if we read our 12 volts, we'll notice it's also kind of high. So again, going back to the 5 volts with my meter on here, this is going to take both hands. There's a white knob right up here, and this is a plastic flathead. I'm going to actually turn that to the left. You see that change? I barely turned it. We're going to get it as close to 5 volts as we can. Right there, 5 volts. Now let's check our 12. We're a little bit under 12, and that's okay because our 5 volts is almost spot on. Now we're going to check that later when we hook up the board. If the board drains that down a little bit, we may have to adjust that back up. The way we do that is stick that in there and turn it to the right. Very, very small change made a huge difference. Okay guys, we're going to hook up the wiring from the JAMMA harness to the power supply. Now we're doing this on the outside of the game because one, it's a lot easier for me to reach, and it's a lot easier for you to see. So you're going to look for, there's a lot of different connectors on the ends of these wires. We're looking for the one with the 4 terminals. Again, you don't have to solder anything. And they're color coded, and we have our chart here. So it's really simple. The yellow is the plus 12. And wait, you want to do this with the power off. Make sure the power is off. We're going to unscrew that a little bit, slide the fork terminal up under there, and then tighten it back. So our yellow is plus 12. Now, -5 is not used with any of the multi-game boards that are currently available. But you may have one in the future that needs it, or another JAMMA board that you want to install in your game. So the green wire, very important, is the -5. See, there's a minus sign in front of that. Do not hook up the positive wire here. That's red. So the green wire is going to go right under this yellow. Like I said, the game doesn't even need it, but for future reference or for a different type of game board, we'll hook it up so that you could play a different game that may use it for sound or something like that. We're going to put the green wire up under there. So again, yellow on the top, then green. Green is our -5. Do not put the red wire up there. The black wire is our ground. We have two choices here. It can go here or here, either way. I've already loosened this one up. We're going to push him right up under there and tighten him down. Make sure they're up under there good. Also make sure that they don't touch or nothing going across there, and they don't. Now we can hook up the fourth and final wire that's going to our power supply. This is the important one. This is the +5. See, it says +5 right there. So we're going to unscrew this +5. The black wire could have went here or there. Either one, ground wire, is fine. But this one, the red wire, has to go way down here. It's your +5. Don't put it anywhere else but here, or you could do some damage to your game and your board, possibly your power supply. So there we go. Our power supply is now all hooked up wiring wise. Okay, now we're going to wire in the test and the service switch, and that's these two toggle switches. You'll zoom in here. They are, say, off and on. Now what we need to do is take this first part off so that we can get it through the hole, and then we'll put the nut and the button on there. But before we do that, we're going to wire it up on this side. In very small print, there's a 1 and a 2. 1 we're going to call the main wire, and 2 will be our ground. We have 3 wires coming off our harness. 1 is orange, 1 is red, and then the ground has a jumper from one to the other, if you guys can see that. So we're going to call this how about the service switch right here. So service is red. We're going to put this red wire into 1. And then we're going to put one of the black wires into 2, the one that the other guy is going to jumper off of. Okay, now we'll take off this top. You can zoom in. We're going to unscrew the nut that's on the top. You could probably hand tighten these, but you may need a socket or something to get a little tighter. We'll call this the service switch. The test switch. So the orange wire is going to go in pin 1, or number 1. And we're going to, that other jumper wire is going to go in pin 2 here. So right now they're wired up. We just need to mount them, and we're going to get it all behind all these wires. You could put them in either way that you wanted. Normally it's service, then test,
Doesn't really matter if you do it a different way. There's a notch on here, so you'll know which way is on and which way is off. I'm going to flip it around so the notch is on the bottom so that the words are correct. And then the nut will go on top of that. And we'll put both of these on here and we'll be done with the service and the test switch. So what good is a game without sound, right? We need to install the speaker. And they sent us a nice little speaker here. What we thought earlier was fan grills are actually speaker grills. So all you're going to do is put 4 screws through these holes and mount it from the inside. So you won't see it. I would leave these terminals up so you can easily get to them. This is where you're going to need to plug those in. They also sent you a potentiometer, which, if you'll zoom in on this, looks like this. It's a volume knob. It had a nut on it that I screwed off because we're going to mount it up here with the service switch and stuff, so you could just turn your game volume on right there. That's pretty handy. Remember, this kit is solderless, so this potentiometer has 2 wires coming off of it. They have gold tips on them like that, which, look, they kind of match the speaker. Speaker's kind of gold. So we're going to put them on the terminals here. Just slide one on one, one on the other. We're not running stereo or nothing, so this shouldn't matter. You can just put them on. Slide those onto your speaker, and we're going to mount that up in there later. And then you have 2 wires coming from your JAMMA harness. They are in pin number 10 and K on the other side, and they are labeled speaker. Okay, so those 2 wires I have coming around here, and they're going to hook on to the outside terminals of the potentiometer. So if you can zoom in there, one of those wires goes here, and one goes here, and then it has a jumper down to there. So right now, our speaker is hooked up, and we're going to mount it through this hole and tighten that up so that we could turn the volume. And then they also sent us a nice little nifty knob that will go on the outside. So that's what you see, and you'll turn the volume up by this knob.
Okay, we've cleaned up some things. We've mounted the board, we mounted the power supply. Let's take a look in the cabinet. We'll show you what we've done. Now it's time to test the board here in just a minute. There's all of our, this is our JAMMA harness right here. We had a bunch of extra wires because we're using an LCD monitor. We pretty kind of all that up. We hooked up, we mounted the speaker to the wall. This is going to wire up right here. Before we do that, we're going to check the voltage one more time here with our multimeter. Okay, before we plug up the board, we're going to check it one more time. Here is the ground on the end, so we can put the leads right here, and then the 5 volts is down here, and we can turn on the power. We're right at 5 volts, so that's perfect. So we're going to turn that off. Now when we plug in the JAMMA harness, you might see that in pin 7 it says key. The key is where this hole goes. That's how you know it's on right. If you had it this way, it'll go on there, but you'll mess up a lot of stuff. So before you hook this up, make sure it's ground. Number 7 says key. I'll show this one more time. It also says parts side. That means game parts like this. Solder side is the solder side of the board. So we want to make sure that this guy is going in the right place. So very important, do not hook this up wrong. Okay, we hooked up the harness. We made sure the word key is right there in that opening. One more time, we can check the voltage with the power on. We can also check it on the board to see if the board drew it down any at all. We got 4.97, so we are still right at 5. I'll turn that just a hair up. just a tiny bit. Okay, we're right in our range right there. And so now we're ready to hook up the monitor and play. Okay, so now it's time to hook up the monitor. This is a VGA cable. It comes with these covers on it. We're going to take them off. One end is going to plug right into here. We're going to screw these sides in like that. Okay, the other end is going to mount right into our board. Like that. Now the monitor has its own power supply. This guy, I'll untwist him. So we're going to need some of this length. Plug in here. The other end was part of that harness that we had earlier. It's going to plug straight into there. And they sent some double-sided tape that we could mount that. Again, this will be kind of your preference wherever you think it should be mounted. That's up to you. We'll see where it reaches and see what place we like the best. This, you peel off both sides. It'll just go on the bottom of this power brick. If it'll reach, I would like it mounted right up here, kind of staying out of the way there without putting any pressure on here. Our wires are hooked up. I went ahead and moved this over here so it's not in the way over there. Now we're ready to put our monitor in and turn the game on.
Okay guys, so we have tested our voltages, we finished up the wiring, and everything in there looks really good. In fact, the whole cabinet looks good, but we didn't build this thing to look at, we built this thing to play. So the moment of truth, let's power it on and see what happens. Okay, I've got some LED lights on my game board. I also have a light on the power supply, and there goes the screen. So we know the game is up and working. Now all we have to do is put this panel on and put the top on, and we'll be done with this project. And we'll show you how to do that next. Okay, now it's finally time to put on this door. And you might see that it's labeled O2. Now we thought we were through with the T-molding, but we did have to cut a piece for here and for the sides. Each side has a strip of T-molding, but fortunately we had 9 feet left, so there was no big deal. We had plenty left to do that. Now once the T-molding's on there, pretty much all we have to do is set this in here and then kind of bump it or center it to there. We already pre-screwed 4 screws in here. Now we're just going to screw these in, and that will take care of the door. Now the next step is to install the top glass. And here we are on step 18, the final step, putting on the top. Well, the first thing that they gave us were these little rubber pieces, and there's some holes that go around the top of your game, and those just sit on there, and that basically create a buffer for your top to help it not set flat, and to help it keep from scooting a little bit. Now you may notice your kit comes with a piece of plexiglass like this, and that's fine. Now we have a preference, and for an additional charge you can get a glass top, which we actually recommend that you spend a little bit more and get the glass top like the original games came with. So all we're going to do is put this glass top on the game. And it fits and slides on there just real easy like. Now, we should tell you that the glass top does not come with clips, but Holland Computers sells these little clips that actually go on there and help keep the glass from moving. As you can see, it's pretty good for a couple of adults, but let's say you got a game room full of kids and somebody could easily come and move or take this glass off or pick it up. But with the clip on, they will not be able to do that. So if you don't mind spending just a little bit more, you can get these glass clips that go on here. Now, the original games from the 80s and original manufacturers all put 8 clips on there, so that's what we're going to recommend, that you put 2 on each side to hold it on there. So a total of 8 of these you will need to purchase separately to hold on your glass. Well, guys, you did it. Give yourself a hand, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a high five, because you went from boxes to a working game in just a few hours. We would really like to thank HollandComputers.com for making this kit and for making it so easy to use. There's a couple things we'd like to go back over just to remind you that there is absolutely no soldering at all involved. We didn't have to break out the soldering iron, not even once. Also, that we think it looks great and it's very well made and very sturdy. Now, at the first of the video, we talk about some simple tools that it would take, but we did actually end up using a few more tools, and we'd like to go over them now. The first one was a rubber hammer. You could use a regular hammer, but when it comes to putting on the T-molding, we feel that a rubber hammer really worked a lot better and was easier for us. So you might notice in the video we're actually using a rubber hammer. Another thing that we use, besides the razor blade for the T-molding, we used a pair of really sharp scissors, and that made for getting those cuts real nice and straight. Another thing is we used a pair of needle nose pliers. You might remember when we were putting on the terminals that go to the buttons and so forth, sometimes it was easier to put them on or in difficult places by having a pair of needle nose pliers. We also had a very small screwdriver that we used to adjust and get the power supply good to go. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is we had a cordless drill, which is not necessary, but it did make some parts a little faster. Now, you might notice that there's no artwork included, but you can go to their website at HollandComputers.com, and there is some artwork available for you to buy. There's also, let's say you don't want the cocktail version, there's an upright version or a 3-sided cocktail that you may be interested in, so be sure and check out their website. And while you're at it, check out our website, arcaderepairtips.com, where you can find more tips on how to repair your arcade games. We want to thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.